So you broke your exhaust stud. Fear not, my friends, you're not alone. This is the same exhaust stud that breaks on everybody. You see it right there. It's the one that's in the front, gets all the weather and everything on it. The other three all came off, no problem. There really is no easy way to do this. You have to remove the head. There's not enough room in here with the frame and everything to get in there with a Dremel or anything else to remove it while it's on the bike. And these heads are very expensive. I've fixed issues like this before on car and truck engines. This one here, I'm taking to the machine shop because if you screw it up, best price I could find online was something like $1,300 for a new head. I'll just let the machine shop do it. So we're going to cover getting this head off. First thing you're going to need to do is depressurize the fuel system so we can drain the tank to get that out of the way. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove the fuel pump fuse, and then we're going to run the bike until the fuel in the line runs out. So on the side of your bike here is where your fuse panel's at. These are just dummy screws. This whole cover just pops straight off. Once you have that popped off, you're going to see a sticker inside there that's going to tell you which fuse you need to pull. Fuel pump is the second one down in the middle. It's this one right here. So I'm going to get a pair of needle nose pliers. I'm going to pull that out. Okay, so once you've got the fuel pump fuse out, you're going to go ahead and start your bike up and let it run until it stalls out. Once it stalls out, continue to crank it over for about 3 seconds. That will purge all the high pressure fuel out of the system so that when we go to disconnect the lines, fuel doesn't come spraying out at you. Okay, next step is going to be to disconnect your quick connect fitting here at your fuel tank. I'm going to stick a rag in here to catch any fuel that might come out. You're going to lift up on this chrome sleeve and pull down on the line. Don't twist anything so you don't want to crack anything. So again, just straight up on this, and then this will pull straight down out. To get it started, I had to push up on the black piece also, and then that kind of loosened up the chrome piece where I could push up on this chrome collar and down on the fuel line. Alright, next step is we have to remove this whole conglomerate of crap. Center console, speedometer, all that. We're going to start off with these 3 screws, 2 here, 1 down here. Once these 3 screws are out, I'm going to pull up on this entire assembly, and we're going to have some electrical connections under here to unplug. Okay, one thing I want to show you here, your electrical connections they only go one place. You'll see when you get undone this one, be careful you don't go pulling on this yet. It's connected to your button here. To get this button off, you're just going to grab a hold of it and turn it counterclockwise, and it's going to unscrew, and then that'll come down out of there. As you see, it's attached by 2 little wires, so don't ruin that. And then we have a zip strip that connects it to the inner piece here. It looks like it's part of that ring. So you can either cut that zip strip and put a new one on, or remove that ring. If you kind of work that around, you'll be able to pull that. You can see here now what I'm talking about, how that's held in there. Or like I say, you can remove the ring if you want to do that. You'll have your rubber gasket here. So once that's done, we can set this aside. And I would advise you just put that button right back on there so you don't lose track of it. And once these are out of the way, we'll have one more connection here to our fuel pump. So we'll be able to pop that off. Go ahead and remove your vent hose here. Okay, I kind of tucked everything in the risers there to hold it out of the way. Gives me a little cleaner working area. Next step after that is going to be to come down here to the crossover hose, and it is 5/16 inside diameter. What you're going to do is you're going to cut one of these clamps, plug the end of it with a bolt, and then hurry up and tuck your new section of hose on the other end so you can drain the tank into a gas container. So again, pop that off and plug it, and then get a hose connected on there. You're going to lose a little bit in this process, but there's no other way to do this. This crossover hose has to come off before we can remove the fuel tank. So draining the tank via the crossover hose is our next step. Give you a little tip here. How I'm going to do this is I'm cutting the clamp with dikes right there, and I'm going to cut it on the upper end. I've got about a half a tank of fuel in here, so I'll plug this here hose and tip the bike the other way to drain the fuel out. Like I say, you can go about it any which way you want, but that's how I'm going to handle it. You may need a small flathead screwdriver to get in here and break the seal. Don't be too concerned about damaging this hose. This is easy enough to replace. You just get a new section of hose. It only runs from here to the other side. It's maybe 8 inches long, if that. So I was able to pop that off, put my new hose on, stick a screw in here, and then I had a zip strip ready to put on there because you'll still get a little leakage unless you have a perfectly sized screw. But you can hear it's draining pretty quick. Okay, next we're ready for our nuts and bolts. One right here and one up front here. Go ahead and remove those. Okay, once you have those 2 bolts out that hold the fuel tank in, carefully lift up on the fuel tank. You're gonna see a little wire that comes out right here. This is your fuel gauge connector. We have to get that unplugged. And just push down on the backside and that'll pop right off. Pop it off of the connector here, where it's held in there. And then the tank is ready to pop off. You getting scared yet? Bike's starting to look a little skinny. Alright, go ahead and pop off your spark plug wire there. Let's go ahead and take off the air cleaner on the other side. And go ahead and remove the 3 screws here. You'll have to slide this clip out of the way to get to the 3rd one that's behind there. Before you remove this, take note of how these hoses go. We're going to be taking those off. They just pop right inside there and pop on there. So this is how they're going to go back on. Go ahead and remove these 2 screws that hold the housing in there. Once that's done, this will just pop right off and you'll have a gasket behind there. And you'll have one more connector to unplug right on the bottom side. Go ahead and unplug that and pull that off. Okay, now we're down to the meat and potatoes and the whole reason we're here. We're going to start by taking off the rocker cover. This is done in a certain sequence. You're going to do the middle on one side, then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You're going to alternate how you loosen them up. Okay, go ahead and pull off your rocker cover. You may have to give this some gentle taps with a mallet to knock that a little bit loose from the suction from the gasket. Then go ahead and pull off your rocker cover. Should also mention there are 3 short screws and 3 long screws. When you look at the rocker cover, it'll be apparent where they go, so don't worry about that. That's obvious. Okay, next we need to remove the spring cap retainers. You're going to stick a flathead screwdriver in this notch you see there, and you're going to rotate it where you can get in there. Push down on this, and that'll give you room. That one's a little stuck. That'll give you room to press down on this sleeve here. You see it's loose on this side. You see the spring on the one I already took off. You're going to press down on that, and that'll give you room to work this out. So go ahead and remove both of those. Okay, next up is what they call the breather assembly. That's this piece right here in the center. We're going to remove these 2 bolts. Okay, once those 2 screws are out, you'll be able to then remove your breather assembly. You'll see this little piece here. That's what I was fishing out of there. It goes in the center. Okay, next is what they call the rocker arm support plate bolts. You have 2 here, 2 here. These are going to be turned incrementally, a quarter turn at a time until they're all loose. Again, you do special sequences like this on certain parts to prevent distorting the part. If you loosen up these 2 and those are torqued down real tight, we can distort it. Once you feel the pressure let off these, you don't have to do the quarter turns anymore. Also on the other side, once you get to a certain point, you're going to need to use a wrench. The socket won't fit in there anymore. It'll jam up against the frame. Okay, once that's done, you can go ahead and remove your rocker arm support plate. Now we're ready to remove the push rods. Make sure you mark, pay attention to how these come out and where they came out. They want to go back in the same hole, in the same direction. Go ahead and pull them right out. Now we're ready to remove what they call the rocker housing. Rocker housing is going to be 6 bolts. 1 here, 2 over in the corner, and then 3 on this side. Again, this is going to be a special sequence. Start in one corner, go to the opposite corner, then over and across, and then one of the centers and the other center. Basically every other one, and then your 2 centers. Again, quarter turn at a time until you feel all the pressure let off of them, and then you can speed do them and get them out of there. Okay, now we're ready to remove the rocker housing. Again, you may need a couple taps with a mallet in here if this is a little hard. Okay, now we're ready for the cylinder head. If you pull this gasket off of here, you'll see you have 2 bolts right here, and then there's going to be 2 on the other side, 1 on either side of the spark plug. If for whatever reason you haven't done it yet, remove your spark plug. Now this will be a little bit different. We're not going to do an X or anything. We're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, and then back again. Quarter turn at a time until they're all loose. These are a 12-point half-inch socket. They look like an external Torx, and they're not. You'll strip it out if you do that. It is a 12-point half-inch socket. These are on there pretty stinking tight. These are torqued, so obviously, but definitely make sure you adhere to the quarter turn rules on these so that you don't distort the head. Okay, go ahead and remove this bolt here and this bolt here that goes to this horn bracket, just so we can move that out of the way so that we're going to be able to get the cylinder head out of there. Okay, go ahead and remove this middle bolt also then, and we'll be able to get it out of the way. Then you'll be able to just put that off to the side. Okay, next thing we have to get out of the way is this sensor here. Just pull that boot back and you'll be able to see where it plugs in. Just pop that off. Then our very last obstacle is going to be where the fuel injection comes into the head. Now to finish this up, you're going to grab a hold of the head and just wiggle it loose. And most likely, I don't know which side might pop out for you, but the throttle body section is all one big hunk in here. And mine came off of the back side first. So now I got to get it off the front side, and it's just an O-ring that holds that in there. I'm going to pop this apart and then I'll show you what I'm referring to. Okay, so grabbing hold of this side and holding back on the throttle body assembly, I was able to pry them apart. And then the head's just going to come out just like that. So you'll see here, these two screws don't actually come out. The throttle assembly just sits in there with an O-ring. So once you have that popped apart, you get that sensor off, then that just pops off. Same thing with your rockers or your lifters here. These pieces just can stay in there. We don't need to pull those out and mess with those O-rings and all. Now I can take those to a machine shop and have them drill and tap that or do whatever they need to do. Okay, if your machine shop doesn't put the stud in for you, they might not have one in stock or whatever. Thread it, how you're going to put it in, thread it in by hand as far as you can. And then it's going to start to get a little resistance. Put your new nut on there. It's a different size thread, and that'll bottom out. Once that bottoms out on the end of its threads, then just go ahead and use that to overcome the remaining torque. And once you get that in there all the way, one quick hit with the ratchet will loosen that back up without pulling the stud out. That's how easy that goes in. That's all there is to it. Now when you put all this stuff back together, you want to use a copper-based anti-seize. All your exhaust components. Use a copper, Permatex or whatever. The copper is better for anything that's high heat. Your regular anti-seize isn't going to hold up to these high temperatures. So whenever you're working on exhaust components, use the copper. All of the pieces for the exhaust, pulling the head, everything. I got my new circlips for the exhaust. We got a head gasket. We got our two other gaskets we had involved here. I got 4 new exhaust nuts and the stud and an O-ring for that breather assembly that goes on top of here. Everything, all the parts included, was like $30. The cost for the machine shop to remove that broken stud was about $30 even also. So even though the manual says you can reuse these gaskets, I wouldn't. Just get new ones. It's not that expensive. The assembly is going to be the reverse, obviously, of disassembly. Make sure you take your time. Write down each individual step if you need to. Don't forget any of your electrical connections. The only other note was on your breather assembly that was in the center there. Don't forget about the little O-ring that's down in there, in case you didn't take notice of that. But other than that, hopefully that helps you out. Gives you an idea of what you're looking at here. So that completes this process. I'll get all this put back together. And again, I'll put the torque specs in the note section of the video. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and if this helped you out at all, please subscribe.